Hello, friends, and welcome. I'm Dr. Jeffrey Rutstein. I'm a clinical psychologist specializing in trauma treatment and the host of Sounds True's upcoming online event called the Trauma Skills Summit. Debuting later this fall, this free online summit will have a special focus on offering practical skills you can use to calm your nervous system, access inner resources, and deepen connection with others. We have 24 world-renowned experts in the field of trauma who will share their wisdom and leading-edge tools for healing trauma, including the pioneer of a body-based form of psychotherapy called somatic experiencing, Dr. Peter Levine. Today, I'm very happy to be able to share with you a powerful video from Dr. Peter Levine and 3 senior faculty from the Somatic Experiencing Trauma Institute as they discuss and demonstrate ways to soothe uncomfortable feelings associated with COVID-19. Peter wanted as many people as possible to access the support these practices provide, and so he graciously wanted us to share this with you. Today, it is impossible not to be touched in some way by the impact of this pandemic and the associated worries, fears, insecurity, and uncertainty. Not in our lifetimes has the world faced such a crisis. We have never before been witness to such fear and powerlessness being felt by so many humans all at one time. So in addition to our own reactions of fear, anger, frustration, despair, and withdrawal, we are also swimming in a soup of collective fear and danger. When almost everyone else is anxious and upset, it amplifies and intensifies our own reactions. The pandemic is triggering and maintaining this ancient survival response in us. Many people report feeling unsettled, haunted by worries, difficulty sleeping, oversleeping, exhaustion, difficulty concentrating, and overeating. All of these are signs of distress and nervous system dysregulation, which is totally normal during this time. But it is also extremely depleting and exhausting when it is continual like this. Our nervous systems were optimized for a quick survival response. We need to immediately fight, run, or play dead so that we can live another day. There was no waiting. However, during this pandemic, all we are doing is waiting for some safe future to arrive. And this leaves us in a chronic state of overwhelming stress. Also, if you suffer from anxiety, depression, or trauma, then this time can be even more challenging for you as the pandemic can intensify these same feelings. So what can you do? While we may be powerless to stop the pandemic and the disruption it is causing, what we do have control over is how we respond to the situation. In this video, you will learn more than a dozen body-based practices and ideas that can help you calm and soothe your distress and that you can do with your children to help ease their distress. These exercises are simple, easy to do, and can shift you from fear to calm fairly quickly. They have been used with great success for years with individuals who've experienced trauma, and so we know they are very helpful for these traumatic times we are all facing. The bottom line is this: shifting from upset and fear to a more calm and centered state is not only possible, but these exercises can help you stop climbing the walls, get better sleep, improve immunity by lowering your stress reaction, and help you feel more balanced and calm. From all of us at Sounds True, we sincerely hope this video offers you tools and practices to support you through these challenging times.
Welcome. We are the Somatic Experiencing Institute, and we are faculty. We are here recording a public webinar. And in the webinar, we'd like to support you, the public, to learn about stress, symptoms of stress, and how that you can help yourself to regulate in these challenging times. So we're going to introduce ourselves, and Then we will have some material from Dr. Peter Levine. My name is Dr. Abby Blakesley. I'm Somatic Experiencing Faculty for the Somatic Experiencing Institute, Legacy Faculty for the Ergos Institute. And my background is a PhD in clinical and somatic psychology.
And I'm Dave Berger, and I am also a senior faculty member for Somatic Experiencing Institute and a member of the Ergos Dr. Peter Levine Legacy faculty as well. My professional background includes physical therapy, somatic psychology, and a variety of different kind of body works that I integrate into those clinical practices.
Hi there, my name is Glindy Nickerson. I'm a Somatic Experiencing Trauma Institute faculty member. I have a doctorate in clinical psychology and I have a background in bodywork as well. We'd like to introduce a little bit about what somatic experiencing is. So it is a body-based approach to healing trauma and chronic stress. It was founded by Dr. Peter Levine, who found that animals in the wild don't get traumatized. He wondered why that is. So when animals in the wild encounter a threat, a huge amount of energy is mobilized to fight or to flee away from that threat. When they survive, they release excess survival energy through their body, sometimes with shaking and trembling. So with the COVID-19 scare, what's happening for us is that we're also registering this as a threat. The majorities of wild animals who have this instinctive release of this potent energy find that their nervous system reset out of that threat physiology. And if they didn't do this, they'd be easy prey or they would die of disease. Humans can release this too. We just have forgotten how. And Dr. Peter Levine is going to share with us a few exercises as well as a little bit more about fight, flight, and freeze.
I think one of the things that's most frightening about this epidemic is that it's coming from something that we can't see. We know that it's somehow around us, but we're unable to localize it. You know, the nervous system was designed evolutionarily to respond to threat that we can see, and to respond either by fleeing or by fighting, the fight or flight response. When it's something that we can't see and we can't localize, we actually go into a third defensive reaction of the nervous system, which is basically to shut down. And this is especially true because we have the lockout where people can't leave their homes, and so they feel more and more trapped. Now, fortunately, there are things that we can do to not be paralyzed by the fear, to be able to not be complacent, of course, but to not live in fear and in panic. And before explaining how this works, I'm just going to demonstrate an exercise that I've designed to help us come back into life, to engage our vitality. And what we do is take an easy full breath. I'll demonstrate it. And on the exhalation, I make the sound "voo," vibrating it as though it's coming from my belly, actually vibrating it into my belly, and letting the sound and the breath go all the way out, and then just allow the next breath to come in, filling first belly, and then chest, and again repeat. And I just wait for the breath to come in. And maybe just one more time. Then just rest and notice any of your sensations, feelings, thoughts, or images that come into your mind's eye. Just noticing them without judgment. Just, oh, okay, this is what I'm experiencing right now.
So throughout this world, within our communities and our families, with this coronavirus threat, our bodies and our brains have experienced a very real threat. And with this, there is this energy that gets mobilized. And along with that can come some strong symptoms, fearfulness, anxiety, anger, heightened emotions, as well as some bodily symptoms. This brings with it the power to connect our bodies to the ability to manage that. So in terms of the COVID-19 threat, we're dealing with a situation where we want very much to get away from something, but we can't see it. And we're in maybe close quarters with people where we feel that sense of a threat, and yet we may not be able to know how exactly to evade that. So there's this urge and sense of wanting to flee, but how to do that. And so that comes into our bodies, and that can come through our bodies in the form of tension in the legs and a feeling of nervousness and anxiousness. So wanting to confront it, to confront that COVID-19, to confront the virus, which we may not consciously be feeling, but there may be some agitation or irritation, tension, a tight jaw, clenched fists. There could be tight or jittery legs that are showing up because it's that survival energy that wants to come in and protect you and your family, even though it's hard to actually identify where it's coming from. So there may be this feeling of mobilization through your arms or legs, and we feel it as tension, and we don't know what to do with that. But we're actually going to talk about a few different ways to do that. Both Peter Levine will, as well as my two colleagues.
Sometimes the sensations can be a little bit scary at first because we're experiencing something that we've cut off from. So another exercise that I find really helpful is what I call the hug exercise, and you can do that anytime. It's good to do it, I think, after the VU exercise, which you just participated in. And so here's what we do. We take our right hand and put it here by our side of our ribs, by our heart, and take our left hand and put the left hand here on the right shoulder. And just to imagine that you're helping yourself hold what you feel, that you're able to contain the sensations and feelings so that they're less frightening, less overwhelming, for sure. And you can do this for a few moments, and then if you want, you can go back to the VU exercise. So I'm just going to actually leave my hands here, my arms here, and I'll do it one more time. Now again, initially the sensations might seem a little bit frightening. And again, that's natural, it's normal, because we haven't felt these sensations perhaps for a while. And I have a little prop here to demonstrate this. This is called a Hoberman sphere, and you can get them on Amazon. So when we experience fear and shutdown, we go into a state of contraction. So we're not in a full state of contraction here, but we are in a state of contraction. Now, when we first start to experience the sensations in our bodies, it may actually feel worse for a little bit, but then as we're able to just notice the sensations and how they change with time, what happens now, what happens next, we'll notice that it may feel a little bit worse, but then there's an expansion, and then another contraction, and another expansion, and another contraction, and another expansion, each time expanding more and more. And that's what we need to be able to do, to expand our inner self enough to contradict the feelings of overwhelming helplessness which this unknown threat provides to us.
One of the things that can happen when we don't have the quick response to shed all that survival energy of fight and flight is that it builds up inside of us. And the buildup, which can include things like tense muscles, shortness of breath, the desire to get mobilized and move, or to begin to shut down and isolate, is that symptoms like these and other symptoms can develop. We call these kinds of symptoms anxiety. In fact, sometimes we call them panic. This is a unique situation in that we're sharing this with the whole world. It's a pandemic. And it's really important to distinguish pandemic from panicdemic. We don't have to do panic in a pandemic. And the symptoms of panic are an exaggerated form of anxiety, which is a stuck flight, a stuck fight inside of our bodies. Sometimes what we do with those is we begin to get agitated. We want to get that energy out of our bodies. We begin to take it out on other people. We get irritable. We get into fights that probably we might not have gotten into, or we begin to isolate. We begin to shut down. Maybe we're sleeping longer than usual. We feel depressed, and we begin to shut down. And it can be either of these extremes, or it can be some variation of those. And these are really important times for us to do something to counter those responses, counter the responses of our body, of our physiology, to things that we, in many, many ways, quite literally, have no or little control over. The good news is that what we do have control over is how we respond to what we're perceiving and experiencing as a threat. We don't have to respond with the clenched up, tight shortness of breath or the isolation and depression. We can respond differently. And as we proceed, we'll talk about some strategies that we can use to counter those responses.
We shouldn't be talking about social distancing, but rather about physical distancing. And what we're doing here today, I don't know how many hundreds or thousands of people are viewing this, but we are connecting. We are connecting in this social way. This is critical. So please, let's just call it physical distancing, and the importance of social connection in many different forms. Even Porges talks about how important social engagement is in regulating the nervous system. And so again, I think we should change the discourse from physical proximity to social closeness in every form that it takes. And I'm reminded, I spend a lot of time in Switzerland, usually during the summer months, and there's a horn. It looks a little bit, like those big, long Tibetan horns. It's called the Alp horn. And the sheep herders who are up for many weeks, even months during the summer without contact with others, grazing their sheep. And they sing to each other with the Alp horn. So let me just play this a little bit here. And you can just hear it from valley to across the valleys, each talking to the other in some kind of emotional Morse code. And they yodel with the horn. Really
letting your body gently move with the music. Feel your guts, feel your chest. Feel your breath. Feel your hands, your feet.
So there are some other things that we can certainly do during this unique time. One of them is just being aware of what kind of content or focus that you have. There's a tendency for us when we have this hypervigilance, right? And we're sort of, many of us are kind of stuck in this more hyper-aroused state with an external threat that we can't locate. So we often start to try to locate it where? In the media. Where being informed can be really helpful and grounding for some people, there's also this ongoing, overwhelming content load. And, we sometimes talk about, how the overload of, really trauma, in a sense, from the media, and that we can get hooked into that. Mm-hmm. So be really attentive of where you place your attention, and alternating content. If you are going to be looking towards sources, finding there's some good news websites that are out there. I know many of my colleagues have started to flip over to the zoo channels. The Cincinnati Zoo, they have webcams of the animals that you can begin to look at. Focusing around things that give you pleasure in your home. Many of us put up art and perhaps we haven't appreciated for a long time. Looking at Dave's wonderful rug back there, there are a lot of things that we can slow down and take some opportunities to sink into. We call this noticing resources. And you can externally begin to see it, but you can also feel, how does that make you feel in your body? When you look at something beautiful, or you read some alternative content that helps you to feel more connected or more peaceful, or something that's interesting to you. Another thing that we have an opportunity to do is to reach out. So even though we're physically distant, it doesn't mean that we have to socially distance. And so a lot of people are calling old friends. They're video conferencing if you have the capacity to do that. They're having regular Zoom calls. My kids are having virtual play dates. So we're just hooking them up on FaceTime, and they're walking around the house and showing each other the Lego sets that they're building, or talking to grandpa over the phone and showing the paintings that they're doing. So there's a lot of this kind of, capacity to stay connected in other ways. I do want to mention something about our kids during this time, because they're quite vulnerable to what they hear. And we're making a real profound effort to not talk about the news in front of them, not having the news playing in the background, not having them see all of the statistics that are flashing up on our screens when we turn on our news feed, and making sure that when we are talking about it, that it's age appropriate, that it's spaced out so that they're not hearing about it all the time, and that we're just kind of noticing our own overall stress, so that we have a conversation about what are we doing around financial decisions, or what are we doing around some big work decisions that we need to make, that we're doing that set aside from them, so that they're not picking up our concern and our anxiety and have a sense of their complete world being torn asunder more than it already has been, with all the disruptions and doing school virtually and many new stressors in their lives. So just be very conscientious of that, because they take in a lot from our physiology. So how grounded we are and what we are showing in our bodies. What is our heart rate doing? What is our breath? What is our circulation? That's what they pick up on, prosody of our voice. So really do be extra protective for them in kind of how we are within ourselves, but also what we're presenting.
Wanted to just put out a few ideas of things that you can do with your kids during these troubling times. First thing is, as parents, when we can settle ourselves, when we can self-regulate, the kids will pick that up, they'll mirror that. So it's really, really important to address our own fears and to be able to have good communication with our partners, if we are with a partner, and if we are with ourselves, to settle within ourselves. Activities that might be helpful. First of all, let them know that you're going to keep them safe, that you're going to do everything to keep them safe. And this is a difficult time, but it will pass, it will end, and they'll be able to go back to school, they'll be able to be with their friends, hopefully they're also FaceTiming their friends, keeping in contact with them. Teachers are maybe also giving classes. And then there are wonderful programs on public television, kids programs, and they're all about learning different things, including emotional IQ. Sadly, Mr. Rogers is no longer with us, but there are still wonderful programs. Drawing and painting together. Sharing. Often I'll draw while I'm with the child, I'll draw while the child is drawing, and then we'll both share with each other what we drew, what feelings we have about the pictures, about the different figures in the paintings, in the drawings. And again, that's something that will start bringing up children's concerns, and that you'll be able to then address them with them. Making up stories together, singing together, dancing together. These are all things that kids really, really love. Exercising together, and when possible, walking outside and walking in nature, when it's allowed, of course. Singing, moving, dancing, participating in family tasks, for example, cooking together, children learning how to make recipes and how to cook food. Of course, where that's safe, where the children aren't likely to harm themselves. And again, those are things that kids love to do. I imagine you're already doing a number of these things with your kids. So these are just some additional suggestions that I found to be very helpful in addressing children's fears and hopes, and to help them restore bounce back their resilience, to help them return to confidence, joy, and resilience.
It's a unique circumstance having a threat in the outside that we can't see, and either the threat on the inside for people who have been infected, or the perception that I might be infected and I might have a threat on the inside. So it's in a certain way a double whammy. With either of these, though, the mobilization energy wants to get out. It wants to be expressed. And this is very important. It's very important to take advantage of this desire. How do you do that? You move. One way is to get yourself moving. It doesn't mean big, strong, heavy-duty movements necessarily. What it means is just get yourself moving, wiggling, shaking it out, mobilizing your bodies. That's one very important strategy. As soon as you feel your muscle tension, your breathing pattern begin to constrict, as soon as you feel it begin to go up, move, wiggle, walk around the house, go outside for a walk, get into nature, get into a different environment, and then come back into the house. Because there'll be relational issues that can also come up. Remember, unless you live alone, there's more than one person that's dealing with this kind of energy. So movement is very, very important.
I'd like to share with you a few things that you can do at home to release some of this energy that gets bound up, locked in our bodies and in our minds. So I just showed you some exercises that you could do sitting, and here are some things that you can do standing and moving. So first start by feeling your feet on the ground. Really feel how you are connected into the ground, into the floor through your feet, and how that ground can come all the way up your ankles and your legs, into your hips, into your spine. Really feel as much as you can connected with grounded. So here's one to mobilize some energy that gets locked in our upper bodies and release that energy down into the ground. So start like you notice as I come down, my knees bend and then they straighten as I extend. And you can add a sound. Whew. Whew. Ha. Let the jaws hang loose. Ha. Ah. And feel. Remember, the idea here is not just to do the exercise for exercise sake, but to use the exercises to open up the energy in your body. Another thing that I find really, really beneficial is skipping. You know, all children do that. Skip, skip, skip to the loo, my darling. Do, do, skip to the loo, do, do, skip to the loo, do, do, skip to the loo, skip to the loo, my darling. Okay. So if I could make a fool out of myself, why don't you give it a try? And again, just waiting, letting things settle, and just feel your body relax. Feel your body open into the sensations and feelings. Just allowing. I want to add something here, because many people have physical limitations or suffering from different kind of pain, conditions like fibromyalgia. And even if you do these things laying in bed and do them actually 99% in your imagination, imagining your body moving in different ways, sometimes this can be as beneficial as actually doing the movement, because we're focusing more on our inner sensations that way. So find the right way for you. It's not a competition. It's just to help us come back into our bodies and recapture the energy of aliveness, which got blocked in dealing with all of this fear and perceived threat.
There's a very simple, easy strategy that I show clients all the time to help reduce the stress level in the body very quickly. This is how it's done. Allow your tongue to soften. Allow it to just melt to the floor of your mouth. And you may notice that almost immediately your breathing gets a little bit more gentle, a little bit easier. And that's really important. In fact, saying out loud to yourself, I can breathe. I'm alive and I can breathe, is really, really important to do. So movement, soft tongue, soft belly are very important. And tell people, I'm feeling anxious. Don't hold it all inside, because that builds up the energy inside. Tell people, I'm feeling anxious, I'm feeling depressed. You don't have to hold this alone. In fact, there are billions of people all around the world that we're all holding it together, which is also a very unique circumstance. While we are physically distancing, we're also coming together. And it's important to hold that in the foreground as well. You're not alone.
That we really need to maintain social engagement, because it's a buffer against fear and helplessness. So here's an example of social connection with physical distance. And some of you may have seen this. Enough volume there. everybody's a musician. Everybody's an artist. Little kid just jumping for joy.
Here are a couple of brief strategies, embodiment strategies that you can use whether you have kids or not, but when you're feeling stressed. Sometimes just feeling down into your legs and the contact with the floor, a lot of, we call it, when we're heightened, right, or shut down, we often lose contact with the sense of grounding or, the physicality of where we are in space. So just noticing your feet on the floor and that connection. Sometimes if you feel stress, you can put your hand over an area that's tight, right? This can be for a sense of containment or holding or comfort. And then notice how that helps. Does something soften? Do you feel your heart rate dropping a little bit from being heightened? Do you feel your shoulders drop or a little sense of expansion or an awakening of some pleasant, energized feeling? So these are the kind of the internal shifts that we can feel. And the more you can really begin to pay attention to that felt sense, we call it, the felt inside, that can be really stabilizing and really helpful. So these are things that I use. I also hum a lot with my kids. We're all, piled up on top of one another. But humming and just having a little bit of sound vocalization with a little bit of movement. So, Dave talked about some of the movement. Peter has some movement too that he discusses. But little bits of movement, a little bit of sound. And that's soothing for the children as well, so that there's rhythm, and sometimes they'll start humming with me.
Yeah. Can I add something to that, Abby?
Mm-hmm.
No matter what the strategy is, whether it's feeling your bottom in the chair, or if your feet can reach the ground, you can feel the ground, or having a hand here, or humming, whether you're supporting yourself, a child, an older person. I think the most challenging part is to put everything else outside of your thinking processes and come just to that touch or sound, even if it's for 2 seconds. If it's for 10 seconds, 20 seconds, great. Even for 2 seconds, it's really quite literally giving yourself a vacation from the worry, the fear, the anxiety, the belief that you can do nothing about this. Right? That's the hard part, but it is a very doable part.
I'd like to share with you a beautiful, relevant poem. It's by a Franciscan brother named Richard Hendrick, an Irish brother. It's called Lockdown. Lockdown. Yes, there is fear. Yes, there is isolation. Yes, there is panic buying. Yes, there is sickness. Yes, there is even death. But they say that in Wuhan, after so many years of noise, you can hear the birds again. They say that after just a few weeks of quiet, the sky is no longer thick with fumes, but blue and gray and clear. They say that in the streets of Assisi, people are singing to each other across the empty squares, keeping their windows open so that those who are alone may hear the sounds of family around them. They say that a hotel in the west of Ireland is offering free meals and delivery to the housebound. Today, a young woman I know is busy spreading flyers with her number throughout the neighborhood so that the elders may have someone to call on. Today, churches, synagogues, mosques, and temples are preparing to welcome and shelter the homeless, the sick, the weary. All over the world, people are slowing down and reflecting. All over the world, people are looking at their neighbors in a new way. All over the world, people are waking up to a new reality, to how big we really are, to how little control we really have, to what really matters, to love. So we pray and we remember that, yes, there is fear, but there does not have to be hate. Yes, there is isolation, but there does not have to be loneliness. Yes, there is panic buying, but there does not have to be meanness. Yes, there is sickness, but there does not have to be disease of the soul. Yes, there is even death, but there can always be a rebirth of love. Wake to the choices you make as to how you live now, today. Breathe. Listen behind the factory noise of your panic. The birds are singing again. The sky is clearing. Spring is coming. And we always are encompassed by love. Open the windows of your soul, and though you may not be able to touch across the empty square, sing. Let us all sing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone, for your time and for listening. We hope this was a helpful introduction to somatic experiencing. And please feel free to share this with others, especially your friends and family that are in need. If you'd be interested in finding a somatic experiencing practitioner to do a little of this work with one of our practitioners, please go to the traumahealing.org website and go to find a practitioner. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Stay safe and stay well.